So we're living in a post-Nintendo Switch 2 announcement world now, hyped from the 10 seconds of new Mario Kart 9 footage, and validated to know that everything we thought we knew, we actually did know for once. But now that the hardware speculation is out of the way, one of the many questions left in everyone's minds is, can this thing actually sell 150 million units?
Actually, it's just another reuse situation. The name sucks and it's using 7-year-old hardware, and no third party is going to want to develop for this thing.
When coming at this rationally, probably not. I mean, how often does a sequel to one of the best consoles of all time sell more than its first entry to then become the best-selling console ever? Apparently often enough for this to warrant discussion, so let's take a look at the modern gaming landscape, what the Switch 2 has going for and against it, to try and determine if we're about to witness 7+ years of market domination or a slow decline into obscurity. As with any new console release, the gaming community is divided on its potential success or lack thereof. But generally, at first glance, things seem to be looking up for Nintendo. Their 2-minute teaser trailer racking up tens of millions of views on their Nintendo of America YouTube channel alone in less than a week is a pretty good indicator that people care about this thing and they want to know more. Nintendo calling it the Switch 2 as they directly compared the differences from their last console to their next-gen offering, showing their best-selling game franchise is getting a new entry on this new console and your prior games are also compatible, is as safe of a play as you can possibly get. Do I even know you? Alas, it seems that their strategy is quite simple. We're on top of the world with the Nintendo Switch, so let's take as many of these Switch users with us to the next generation. However smart that strategy may seem at first, it looks to me that with this initial trailer they are merely pulling back in users who already were sold on the Nintendo Switch, strengthening the Switch brand in the process, but not necessarily expanding their horizons, which in the context of this thing selling more than its predecessor is not a good sign. So let's envision what Nintendo may do and is already secretly doing to sell this platform to a broader audience than ever before, as I'm starting to firmly believe that the Nintendo Switch 2 is going for an all-in-one approach, a console capable of pleasing the most casual of gamers and the most hardcore of fans. Nintendo finally learning from the mistakes of the past to maybe produce the best console they've ever made yet. The hardware specifications, while not official yet, might as well be. Considering the leaks were pretty much 100% accurate to this point, I have more reason than not to believe that we know what we're working with in terms of specs. Maybe not the full minutiae of how these components will be utilized, but enough to declare that the Nintendo Switch 2 will be, at least for the next 4 or so years, capable of running every single third-party release on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. And that's in large part thanks to Microsoft's efforts to offer a cheaper alternative to modern gaming in the form of the Xbox Series S, and locking you out of releasing on Xbox altogether if you can't make your game run on it. In my mind, if a developer is capable of publishing their game on an Xbox Series S, they will be able to get that same game running, possibly with some additional downgrades, but running on a Nintendo Switch 2. We got stuff like The Witcher 3 running on original Switch hardware. That is by all means an impossible port, and yet it happened, and I don't care how downgraded it had to be, it still happened, the will was there. And on Switch 2, as long as companies have their lowest spec targeted console as the Xbox Series S, and the Switch 2 is selling decently well, we will be receiving much more comparable ports than Witcher 3 on OG Switch ever was. Now, for the big bold prediction of this segment, I believe that the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be capable of running Grand Theft Auto 6 at 30 FPS with DLSS cranked from a low base resolution, releasing a year after PlayStation 5 and Xbox releases, coming along with the PC release or slightly after, but I think that it is in the cards, it can happen. The fact that it's even possible suggests to me that if the console is selling well and Nintendo's reportedly already producing 20 million units for the first year alone, we will finally have, after decades, a Nintendo console with comparable third-party support to the competition, something that hasn't happened arguably since the Super Nintendo. Alright, so it can have strong third-party support, at least for the first half of its life cycle, but that alone won't be enough to broaden the scope of Switch 2 sales. Considering Nintendo now has competition in the handheld space in the form of PC handhelds, which in 2017 were a non-issue. And yes, those PC handhelds are still much more niche than Nintendo or Sony, but if we're looking towards outselling the OG Switch, Nintendo will need every sale they can get. So what is a feature that could possibly give them an advantage against PlayStation 5 and Xbox gamers? What could get some of these people to choose Switch 2 instead of a Steam Deck when in the market for a handheld console? Well, for one, Nintendo's own exclusive titles, but that goes without saying. If you have any interest in exclusives, you're probably picking up a Switch 2, especially if the hardware is good enough to run them at consistent frame rates. What about the native mouse functionality then? That's right, the feature that could tip the scales. A genius use of the Joy-Con controllers to effectively give you 2 mouse pointer inputs right out of the box. At the moment, consoles such as the PlayStation 5 and Series X, while supporting keyboard and mouse input, do not natively come with a mouse controller, and PC handhelds based on Linux, such as the Steam Deck, struggle to run popular multiplayer shooters that feature kernel-level anti-cheat, a feature that is becoming more and more common as time goes on. The Nintendo Switch 2 could support said anti-cheat games, for example the next Call of Duty, while coming with a mouse included in the box, and as long as companies are smart about their optimizations, comparable FPS to handheld PCs and maybe even home consoles in some instances. Suddenly, for the first time ever, a Nintendo console might be an attractive offer for, I don't know, competitive shooter fans, or real-time strategy game fans, or any gamer that prior to its release was relegated to PC, and if they wanted to play something in handheld, they'd have to make do with less than convenient solutions to play their favorite games on the go. Now this can broaden their horizons. It all comes down to April 2nd, 2025, will Nintendo show off a plethora of attractive first-party software to please their existing Nintendo Switch audiences, while showing off comparable versions of new third-party releases, as well as the promise of further support and the game-changing mouse functionality? If all that happens to be the case at a price that matches or slightly undercuts the competition, we might be in for a wild ride, and the Nintendo Switch 2 can outsell the original Nintendo Switch. It could be what the PlayStation 2 was to the original PlayStation, perfecting the hybrid console formula, pleasing gamers from all backgrounds. Or it can all go to crap and Nintendo is plunged into chaos, just like how I will be plunged into a deep, dark, depressive episode if you don't subscribe to the channel right now to make this graph go away. Please make it go away. Thank you for your support. Here's how Nintendo can mess everything up. Rewinding back to the reveal, they're playing it safe not because of a mastermind plan to remain at the top. It is clear something much more sinister is happening under the surface. The rumored delay from last year, the fact that they showed so little, Mario Kart 9 doesn't even look that impressive, and the Direct was set for 3 entire months away. They're running behind schedule, the games aren't ready, and it might be time for you to panic. Okay, maybe it's not that bad, but there might be some truth hidden amongst all that speculation, so let's unpack. When Nintendo transitioned from Wii to Wii U, entering the HD era, it was rather tough on them. Some, like Game Freak, still haven't made the transition fully to this day, struggling to release competent HD titles. The Wii U released with a notable lack of big first-party titles, as Nintendo's corporate structure struggled to realign with the new costs and development time needed for a full-fat HD release. What if the Switch 2 really was supposed to come out last year, but Nintendo just didn't have enough games ready to release it, opting instead to internally delay the launch before making any official reveals? That could mean that the climate inside of Nintendo right now is rather tense. Games failing to utilize the hardware's full potential or missing the release window is a chilling possibility that could permanently hurt the Switch 2. My personal take on that theory is that even if the difficulties are indeed true, the prospect of Nintendo delaying a hardware launch for over a year and still not having enough games ready for a release is very pessimistic, especially considering their output of original game releases on Switch 1 the past year. It's mostly comprised of smaller scale studios or straight up just help from third parties, leaving all of their main studios ready to make games for Switch 2 for years now. So I have very little reason to believe that the problem would be that widespread. But it could have an effect, so let's combine that possibility with the second concern that may stop Switch 2 from reaching even higher heights than its predecessor. The console's life is just normal and winds down a bit too fast. What I mean by that is, if you take a look at the original Nintendo Switch's sales per year, you'll see a massive boost in the middle of the generation. The pandemic combined with Animal Crossing New Horizons gave the Switch more longevity than many thought possible, with Nintendo even declaring they wanted this thing to last for an entire decade. It was at this point of the Switch's life where once prominent third-party support started dropping off rather quickly. But Nintendo was able to curb the effects of that by having year after year of absolutely earth-shattering first-party releases. It is not right of us to expect Switch 2 to receive this major mid-generation boost in sales, unless a Switch 2 OLED fixes every problem people may end up having with the Switch 2 and comes bundled with the next Zelda, and even then, we might have just experienced a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with the original Switch. By 2029, when PlayStation 6 and Xbox Box X Series BDX are getting established, maybe major third-party publishers will start looking at Switch 2 the same way they looked at late-era Switch. Even with a large user base, there is no way we can make our vision work within the specs of this platform. so they drop it. And without a major out-of-left-field occurrence that boosts longevity or Nintendo's failure to keep up consistent major releases of their own, Switch 2 might experience a more common console generation lifespan, slowly winding down throughout the second half of its life as Nintendo starts work on their next platform, and Switch 2 is fated to remain shrouded by its older siblings' grandiose legacy. What do you think is gonna happen to Switch 2? Let me know in the comments, I'm interested in hearing everyone out. I personally think that there's always a path to further success, and while I wouldn't discard the possibility of Switch 2 outselling the original, I think that it is likely that it will fall short, but not by as much as some pessimistic people may think. I think a solid 120 million units sold is still very much possible. Nintendo is the premier hybrid console experience, and even if Microsoft and Sony decide to join in on the handheld craze, I don't see that changing anytime soon. They might increase competition, which might in fact make Nintendo not surpass the original Switch, but I sincerely doubt that the Switch 2 won't be the best selling of all of these attempts by far. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Subscribe and leave a like on the video as it helps out smaller creators a ton. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you around. Bye!